Okay, hello everyone. This here is the game developer rant. We put it together in the last 2 days, so it's all going to be very excellent and well prepared, I guess. So I'm first, since I'm the moderator, so I'm going to talk for like 10 or 12 minutes. All of us will do that, and then maybe we'll take questions at the end, but for everyone. We're not going to take them individually. So, okay, I'll start. I'm Brandon Sheffield, director of Necrosoft Games and formerly of Game Developer Magazine, still kind of Gama Sutra and stuff. We have a distributed team with people all around the world. I'm from Oakland, California, but I have developers in Hungary and Poland and also like Ireland and a bunch of places, Uruguay. So that's why I'm here, because several of my coworkers are in Central Europe. So this talk is really about trying to squeeze out the last bit of money from publishers while they're still around, and taking money from new platforms, and also making sure that you always keep your IP and just try to build yourself up as a developer before all of the money collapses, which is probably like 5 or 6 years from now, I think. So first I want to talk a little bit about how we got into this weird situation that we are in with games right now. First, the big developers got bigger, like your Call of Duty developers and that sort of thing, ballooned to huge giant sizes. And the medium-sized developers pretty much all disappeared or died or are struggling now and about to die. Meanwhile, indies kind of rose up on their own, just doing their thing, making games because they wanted to make games. They were sort of bootstrapping themselves, and since there were no middle-sized developers anymore, indies sort of rose and filled that gap. So some of these early indie successes, like Braid or Castle Crashers, that found success on like proving the digital model, they wound up getting a bunch of money, and so maybe they had more money than they knew what to do with. So some of these companies started funding smaller indies. That's what's happening for us. Iron Galaxy, who did Dive Kick, is funding our game Gunsport, which you can play at 7 p.m. tonight at the party. So these indie successes made indies look attractive to people with money. Like if you look at the PlayStation 4 announcement at E3, people considered that they won E3 because they put all these indies up on stage, and they're like, ah, look, they're all real people. This is great. So people want to invest in indies right now because it's good PR for them. So I think there's still some opportunities to get money here. There are platform holders, publishers, and larger indies, and to some extent some like government funds and things. But the main point is indies need to think about money. You can't just make games for the sake of making games unless you have some other magical form of income. If you need to make money with games, if you want to make that your living, you have to think about money. So where to get money? Number one, look for new platforms. New platforms start to invest in content when they start out because they have nothing. They want to build an audience. So if you just find new platforms that are small or not even that well known, not even from someone that is huge like Sony, but it can be, go to them and they will want to give you money. Not a lot, but maybe enough if you're small. Oh yeah, I should point out this all pretty much only works if you're like 8 people or fewer. If you're a bigger company than that, I don't know anything. I don't know how you're supposed to survive at that level. Yeah. Yeah, so with these new platforms, obviously you can't get everything. We tried to pitch to NVIDIA with their Shield console, but that was what they wanted was companies that or games that would prove their Tegra 3D chip, and we didn't have anything like that, so they weren't interested. But others were, because they just wanted something new and weird that they could say, "Hey, look, this is exclusive to our platform." So this is how we actually wound up getting both Sony and Microsoft to fund the same game. which I feel like I should get an achievement for that or something. So next, find smaller publishers or medium-sized developers that are funding. That again happens to us, and smaller publishers think about this stuff differently. They have friendlier models for you because they're lower on the tier. They're not used to getting huge returns necessarily. They're willing to take more smaller bets, and that's a better place to be as an indie. But targeting is still important there. Like Devolver Digital, who did Hotline Miami, they're not going to do a casual kids game or something. It's not going to work for them. Find new platforms to port your existing games to, and then get them to pay you for that. That's again how we got Sony and Microsoft to pay for the same thing. Just always try to get funding for every stage of your game, because it is possible, even if it's not a lot of funding. And check into the funds as well, like Indie Fund, the Behemoth, who made Castle Crashers, they've got a fund also, and there are all these local government grants here in Europe that I'm super jealous of that I can't use. Some of this stuff is tougher in Central Europe because you have to build and maintain these relationships with these funds and things, but people can do it. Dreadlocks from the Czech Republic is doing some similar stuff to this as well, so it's possible. Okay, stuff to remember when you are making these deals: never give up your IP ever. Look at Techland in Poland, for example. They made Dead Island. It basically took their publisher, Deep Silver, from a C-list publisher into at least B, because it was super successful. And how has it benefited Techland? Well, they can say they made it, but they don't own it. They can't do very much with it. That's why they're doing their own stuff now, because they realized, wow, we did a really great job for these guys, and they made all the money. As for timed exclusivity, not permanent exclusivity, if you're on a new platform, they'll want to have your game exclusive there, but don't let that happen. Just want timed, and then once you get that timed exclusivity, like try to cut it in half. It never hurts to ask. We had a game that was supposed to be 4 months exclusive. We said, how about 2? And they said, fine. You just ask. Always ask. Ask for more money than you think you need, but not too much more than others are getting. But always ask for more. Ask for more money, and if they say no, then they say no. But you can try to get more. And ask for higher revenue share as well, and keep it in stages. So for our stuff, at first, it's like a 25-75 split at 75. But then after we double our recoup for the investor, then it switches to 90-10, get 90. Or in another case, 100% for us. So you should try to do that too. Aim your budgets to be lower than marketing budgets on average, because since indies are kind of like a PR machine for these people right now, they may look at you as a marketing investment, and so keeping aware of that can be helpful. And try to get a hit early on, one way or the other, because like I was saying before, at the beginning of a platform's lifecycle, there's an investment phase when they want stuff. They will give you money to be there. Then once you get to the extraction phase, when they have a lot of users, they don't care anymore about you, because people want to go where the users are, so they're like, people will just make games for us anyway. But if you get in with them early enough, then they are still going to care about you later. Let's see. Yes, how to survive while doing this model. Scale small. Be as small as you can. Have as few people as you can. Don't have an office unless you really, really need it. We don't have one. It's a waste of money. Distributed teams can be pretty good. Find people that can live as cheaply as you can, and keep thinking about your financial situation all the time. We had one game where we burned a third of our budget before realizing that this person was going in the wrong direction, and then we had to start the game over with 2/3 of the budget because we weren't paying close enough attention. And have extra opportunities lined up in case something goes south. We currently make are making 4 things at the same time and getting funding for all of them and kind of moving that money around so that everyone can work. Post-release. This Pelican picture came up when I searched for post-release. I don't understand, but I had to include it. Post-release, yes, get publishers to pay for ports or platforms to pay for ports, because that can happen, and it's great to get people to pay you to have a thing that you own on their platform. It's like, there's no downside to that. Once you can put it everywhere, you should, because you never know where it's going to hit, but you have to support it when it gets out there. Try to get into bundles once your game has hit like the end of its tail and it's not really generating new revenue. Try to port old games to new platforms while you work on new stuff, so theoretically your old games can pay for your new ones. That's the dream. We'll see if we get there. And do give revenue share to your contractors, and of course your employees, because you want people to be invested. So this is a good thing. This is a partial list of publishers that are giving money or marketing support that I know of. This is slide 1 of 2. I will get to the other one in a minute. But I should note that the window for the platform and big publisher money, I think, is closing, as I mentioned earlier. Here's that second slide. And they're going to run out of money. And I don't know exactly what's going to happen to the industry after that. But get money now so that you can have some level of success before that happens. And yeah, just make sure you keep your IP. Make sure that you get your game paid for at every step of the way, and you hopefully survive through what's going on right now. All right, that's it. Next is Slavo.
Hello. My name is Slavo Hazucha. I come from Slovakia, and I am in the games development industry since about the year 2000. First, I started working in design marketing for smaller companies in Slovakia. Ah, okay, that's the difference. Yeah, then in 2003, I founded my first own company where I started pre-production of a game, and yeah, from then, since now I've been in several companies. I've been a part of the Tentacle Studios group based in Germany, which yeah, failed quite spectacularly. And after that, I have founded the Games Distillery, which is the company which still exists today, working with yeah, Rant success. Yes, so yeah, and in this Rant session, I'm actually going to talk about an example which I've seen very, very many times happening all over the 15 years of experience in the industry, which is an example of failure of game projects, particular type of failure. Yeah, it's although there is a huge number of games in the market today, and have always been for many years, actually a lot of games never see the release at all, or a large portion of the games which get to the market are just not very good games or bad games outright. Now, how a development can fail or turn out to be a bad game, there's really many ways to this. Often it's something which starts off as a very promising project where all indicators turn green and it looks like this could really be a good game. The budget's right, the timing's right, the team looks capable, and then just on the way it gets ruined. This is happening, but very often actually the whole project sets off doomed to be impossible. It never has a chance to be a good game, and this example I've met quite often, and I want to talk about it in some depth. Now, how does a typical impossible scenario look like? It's usually a scenario where a particular project should be developed and the partner, publisher, or investor is looking for someone to do that. At that point, there is some idea of how the project should look like. And the typical impossible scenario, I'm going to exaggerate terribly, looks like we want to do something like Gears of War 5 for 200k euros in 6 months. Now, this is straight out impossible. course. So no one's really wanting to do that. But the problem is the ingredients of this are often in the specs for an impossible project. So let's say from this point of view, it should be a shooter. Gears of War worked, so it should have some mechanics from that. It should have ample graphics and so on. So there's a lot of specs which, in their entire complexity, already make it almost impossible or impossible for the budget. The problem here is that impossible projects are often downscales of something huge and successful. So and the defining factor of it very often is the budget. The budget is usually something which cannot be moved. The time is often also too short, but time can be sort of coped with unless the budget is being exceeded. So while we have a pretty much a lot of possibilities how to make a small budget work and make a game for a very small budget, it usually does not involve outright downscale of something big and successful. It involves some innovative approach. It might be a work of genius where really for almost no budget something entirely new and superb is developed and hits the market and just works. But it very rarely is just a straight out downscale of something. But on the side of the partner, the problem is that for the innovative thing and the thing of genius, there is no example and nothing to draw the numbers for. So often these kinds of partners restrain to modifying numbers of successful games and downscaling them. And then in this process, again, I'm exaggerating very, very widely, they turned out like World of Warcraft is really huge, but we don't want to get that kind of numbers. We'll be happy with having 10%, 5% and success. It surely can be achieved if the game is decent. So yeah, why not? And if it's 20%, then it's huge. Yeah. So and these kind of specs for projects often get to paper, and they are part of the plan. There's a conservative plan, achieve 5% of the success of the great game, and there is then the ambitious plan, which is achieving more. So how do you usually get in contact with an impossible project? Usually it is through pitching something entirely different. So you have your own pitch, your idea, which might be very healthy and good outright. You've started the production, you've maybe finished the pre-production, or have a prototype, have a demo, and are pitching to publishers. This may not work so well, so for a time you have not yet signed a contract, and then a possibility pops up where someone tells you, we've seen your pitch, it's kind of nice, it could be something. We have this situation here. We want to do this kind of several projects. One of them is Gears of War 5 for 200K, and we think you might be the right type of developer for that. So over your pitch, you start talking about actually a different project, and then the perspective is that after that, maybe you will be able to do your project and so on. So at this point, you might be started to talk to this partner because at some point you might be able to actually do the game you wanted. Usually, and quite often, the start of the negotiations is already the point of no return. So you get some specs of the project. It's described as difficult but possible, and you start to negotiate with the partner about this project. During these negotiations, you may well see that the original scope is impossible, and often the partner sort of agrees that it might be difficult. So steps are being taken to make it possible. And this often again happens on paper only. So you make small steps of your own, the partner makes small steps, you change this and that, and at the end of several months of negotiations, during which, of course, you're further on, you have no financing for the things you want to do, you have something different than the original impossible project, which is still an impossible project, but through negotiations and through modifying it, you end up with actually considering it having a small chance of success. Usually in these time, terms are being switched, like impossible is being interchanged for challenging, no time is being changed for tight schedule, and just plain insufficient features for the game is going to be called streamlined content and things like that. So you have all kinds of these ingredients in the project, and because you've spent so much time with it, and yeah, you are under pressure of doing something, you might end up actually signing this. You might want more money during the process in time. Sometimes it succeeds, but usually the reaction to trying to raise the budget is that the partner or the publishers have someone, team XYZ from country wherever, I don't want to insult anyone, but and this team has actually already agreed to do this kind of title for 50% or 60% of your budget. So they actually want to do it with you because you're closer, you have your pitch, you seem like a promising young team, whatever. But it isn't possible to ignore the offer of Team XYZ who wants to do it for 50%. So if you don't want to do our specs for this kind of budget, we're sorry, we'll have to do to XYZ and just do it there. So these are all the ingredients which very often happen in projects, and at that point when a contract comes out of this kind of negotiation, the game is pretty much doomed. So it never can be a good game. It has a decent portion of failure overall that it never gets finished. If it gets finished, it usually gets finished with huge additional effort from your side, and it is to no avail. The situation afterwards is never better than it was actually at the start of these negotiations. Now, this may sound like I'm just turning all the blame on the partner who wants these impossible things from developers to happen, but this is not really the case, which I want to point out. What I want to point out is that the market for this is going to exist as long as negotiations about such projects are going to be entered and successfully concluded. And this is something which should not be done. It's always better to reject a project and call it waste of time at the stage before it's entered than going through an impossible project, either failing completely in development or bringing to market something which is just a terrible game. So yeah, this is my contribution to the games rant for today.
So my name is Kornel Kisielewicz. I'm an indie developer from ChaosForge.org. We do roguelike games. If somebody doesn't know what roguelike games are, there will be another session, shameless advertisement plug, right after this one. But now I'll talk about Unity because everybody loves Unity. So question first to the audience, who uses Unity? Okay, who's silly enough to write his own engine? Okay, I was lying. I hate Unity. And now I'll tell you why. The problem with Unity. But first a disclaimer. Unity is awesome. Unity allowed people to actually without even people without programming skills to start develop their games, to prototype. It has an excellent tool set. We all know that. We all see how many games are written in Unity. We see how fast those games are written. So once I have that out of the way, let me now criticize. So first of all, we have an okay. This is actually not about Unity itself, but it can be applicable to any kind of engine, be it CryEngine, be it Unreal Engine, or any actually even frameworks like GameMaker and others. So basically, I'm not sure if everybody noticed, but the art style of Unity games, if you know the gaming industry well, you can probably spot a Unity game just by looking at its screenshot, which isn't exactly bad. However, it makes a tendency for people to actually not only do games that are similar in style and visual using the pre-made shaders, using Unity assets, which makes a lot of games really similar. And that leads us to the second problem. With this ease of development, we have an explosion of games. Like somebody, there was a really great talk yesterday where somebody mentioned that there's a game submitted to App Store every minute. And obviously, those games aren't written from scratch. Those games are written in engines and sometimes even written in 5 minutes. The business model suggested by somebody who said that it would be really evil but would bring a lot of money would be to take a game like Flappy Bird, take the current Twitter trends, reskin the Flappy Bird with the current Twitter trends, and submit it to Apple each week. And yes, before you ask, that would make a lot of money. Second thing, so apart from the fact that we have a flood because everybody can do those games, and it's sometimes really hard right now to find the games that are worth more, because obviously the fact that the game has cool 3D graphics, that doesn't mean that somebody spent a lot of time in doing the engine to make those cool 3D graphics. And the models don't mean that somebody spent a lot of the time on the models. They could have just bought it at the asset store. So apart from the ease of development, we have another thing. Due to the fact that you don't even have to be a programmer to do the game, we often have a situation that there's a laziness in design. Basically, people don't have to be programmers to do Unity games, which means that they don't fully understand the capabilities they have in the engine. The engine itself might be possible to extend. However, due to the ease of doing a game that doesn't do anything with the engine that it isn't like built in, there's rarely a reason to go beyond. So instead of designing the game in our mind and then implementing it, we design it around things that are simple because we are lazy. We want to make the game really fast. We want to get our cash for the game really fast. And finally, which personally is my biggest pain, there are even limits to every existing engine. My favorite example would be here. Who knows or played Elite Dangerous? A lot less people than I hoped. Well, anyway, Elite Dangerous is a space game that recreates whole star systems in real size, in real distances. Sure, you can fly a ship into a 4-meter sized leather box entry into a space station. But on the other hand, you have a planet, you have moons orbiting that planet, you have the planet orbiting the sun, and each of those objects is in real size. And the distances between them are also in real size. Which means if anybody knows how a float is constructed in programming, he knows that even a double-sized float wouldn't be enough to represent the granularity of the sizes. That means that basically any kind of engine that you would try to use to make Elite Dangerous will need a lot of hacks and a lot of packing around, basically losing performance for just the fact that you're trying to do something that the engine wasn't intended to. You'll be losing performance, and basically you either won't be able to do it, or you will be able to do it but will lose on graphics and other stuff. That's probably one of the reasons actually Star Citizen has problems, because they also want to have a big world, but the CryEngine, on the other hand, doesn't support distances as big as the Elite engine, Cobra I think it was called, because Elite Dangerous had an engine written from scratch that was specifically designed to handle those distances. So basically, another modern example right now, indie, would be No Man's Sky, which probably also would be really tricky to do in any current engine. So, right now we have a situation that we have basically two groups. I know that the differentiation between them is quite, well, there's not a straight line, but we basically have the big budget games, right? And we've got indies. So the big budget guys, they usually don't invest in engine, they don't write games from scratch. They license an engine from another company who makes engines, and they make a game on this engine. And obviously they don't modify the engine too much because that takes time, and why modify it if we can just run Call of Duty on it, right? Or basically, if we change all the models and all the assets in Call of Duty and call it, give me another name of a shooter. Shooter 2. Yeah, so this will be all right. And this will sell, and people will buy it because it's a new game. despite the fact that underneath it it's the same engine. I mean, one engine usually powers so many games without many changes that what we actually do, we are buying assets or plugins to existing engines, and we call them games. And on the other side of the spectrum, we've got indies. Indies usually, for a long time, indies usually used to write their stuff from scratch, and they weren't very productive. Yeah, they weren't very productive. That's true. Anyway, right now, obviously, when you write on a game jam, hey guys, I've got 48 hours. I'll write an engine. That's not a good recipe for success. So basically, when game jams are like the main right now way where indies gather together, it's obvious that nobody is going to write their own engine for a game jam. He will always use either a pre-made engine or a pre-made library for his game, which basically limits his creativity to the things that the engine will support immediately. So there's little room left between those two sides for a tech indie. For a tech indie who actually writes his own tech, trying to break some barriers, break some options, to do something that is not possible, to invent something new, and to actually think about how the code relates with the design. I mean, the design is usually the slave to the possibilities of your engine, and not the otherwise. It's not like you come up with an idea and now try to write code for it, but quite the opposite. So obviously there are counterexamples. I think the three most important ones, at least for me, would be Elite Dangerous, which is written on a custom engine that's written for like the past 7 years, I think. Second thing is obviously No Man's Sky, which is also built on a custom engine, and a little known game about called Dwarf Fortress. Okay, I see some people. I was going to ask it on my second talk, but I'll ask it right now. Who played Dwarf Fortress? I mean, who heard of Dwarf Fortress? Who played Dwarf Fortress? Yeah, and you guys are lying. So right now, when we look at it, let's say we've got that tech guy who actually develops his own engine to try to do something new. Okay, quick disclaimer. If you're trying to make something that is possible within the bounds of an existing engine, trying to write a new engine is really not a good idea. So we're talking about people who are trying to break something, who are trying to come up with something new. Obviously, if you can use an engine and it fully supports everything you want to do, that's a good idea. So when we've got the tech developer between those AAA guys and those indie guys, unfortunately, budget. Yeah, I'm basically now what I'm saying is I'm advertising a style of life which is completely opposite to what Brandon was advertising. Because budget-wise, you will be screwed. The AAA guys will get their money for selling their big IPs and reskinning the next Call of Duty. The indie guys will be getting their money by putting everything into an engine, sometimes breaking rules of the engine. Sometimes some of them go further. But you, after those both guys have ended, you will be on the second stage of writing your own engine. So basically you'll be screwed because nobody will pay you for writing that tech. So my question is, and I would actually like especially to ask you about that because I know you have some points about it, but also other guys, and afterwards when we have questions, I'd like to hear the opinion of the audience. First, is this a problem? And if it is a problem, what kind of solution could we come up with?
There are some funds that are specifically for building tech. Like in Finland, for example, if you're making an engine, that's when they'll fund you. Like the government, for example. So it is a problem, but maybe you need to move to Finland. I know it's very cold.
Yeah, actually, whilst I agree that just having all these prepared things in the engine could limit your imagination, limit the design, I still do think that finally we've reached a phase where content matters a lot more than technology. For the, I don't know, even up to 5 years ago, the lens flare. Oh, that game has a lens flare. Oh, look at that water. Oh, that's a great game because it got the best water shader ever. Um, and right now, we're seeing a lot more games who actually are much more fun above the whole technology thing. I fully agree with what you said that if you want to make a space game and think bigger, then you can't do it with the tools that are at hand because you need a new tool actually. And I fully agree, but I still think there's so many opportunities out there for better games, still using the very same toolset that we currently have. You just need to think out of the box, and people that has been the case for so long, just not on technology level, but now also on the content level. And I still think there's a lot more potential that we're currently seeing with the tools. You just what the one thing that I agree is you have to learn to program. It's not just not putting together a couple of primitives and then hey yeah let's attach that script that I bought from the asset store. Hey look I've got a game. No, that's not it. So you still need to just sit back, think about it, think and do the programming, learn your programming, and then implement it. So there's the whole 5 minute thing. That's the bullshit. But making a bigger game needs time and needs the right people, and we have to get back to that. That's good.
And I would say also the one problem with okay, not the one problem, a problem with your model as well is if you want to port it to multiple platforms, then you have a lot more work to do after you've made the game compared to someone that does it in Unity. What? Theoretically, yes. Theoretically, that's right. But probably not as much as the time it will take. It depends. Anyway.
So that's basically all that I wanted to say. I would want to expand about the like complex using actually technology to make different games, to make more interesting games on the tech level. But I ran out of time. So I'm going to end it right now and maybe mention about it on the next talk. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So, yeah, hi. My name is Michael Paeck. I'm the managing director of Cliffhanger Productions, local game development studio here in Vienna. We're around 35 people. We've been around for now since 2010. And yeah, since I'll take the topic of this talk very seriously, it's a rant. There will be a couple of fucks in there. So if there are any children now viewing the stream, sorry for that. Leave the room, whatever. Yeah, my rant is a little bit doomy. So right now, I think it has never been easier for a single person to make a small game. Look at all these tools out there. You just had the thing. But the problem right now is it has never been harder to actually get paid to develop a normal-sized project. You can still do it. You can go the indie way and just do it for free. But right now, the games industry is also a little bit matured. There are people out there then suddenly who have families who want a steady income, and yeah, all these little things, and that is so much harder than it has ever been. I've been in the games industry for 18 years now, and the whole structure has fundamentally changed. So yeah, if you came into the industry by thinking of, yeah, at some point I'm gonna have my small indie studio, just realizing my own ideas, pitching it, then get paid, and then releasing them. Sorry, that ship has sailed, and I guess it's never gonna come back. So, and if you still want to do it, I recommend shooting yourself in the foot. It's a much more pleasant experience than actually just going for that. I can guarantee you that. So how did we get there? Well, like until up to 10 years ago, the world was nice and cozy. The roles were clearly distributed. You had developers, you had all the creative people there, you had all the programming talent, And you had the publishers; they were always the jerks. But they had the money and they could just release your game. And so there was this nice struggle between publishers and developers, but the roles were very clearly distributed. There was the creative side; they did the game. The other one paid for it and marketed. So everything nice there. You had a couple of guys. You did your paper pitch. Maybe you did a tech demo. You had plenty of publishers that you could show it to. You went there. You showed that's gonna be my game, and we can do it because look at that. Or we've done that in the past. They said, yeah, okay, we're gonna pay you like 400,000, and back then it was okay. To make the game because also technology was still at a much lower level, so you didn't need to have every character didn't need to have like 10,000 polys. You had very small characters, so also the budgets were much smaller. And yeah, that was clear. So I mean, there were some struggles, there were some problems with that model, but in general, it was good. Then that was around when the Xbox 360 came out. Suddenly, technology went on, and the budgets got much bigger. And by that, also the stakes for the publishers got much higher. And so less games got made. So it was already much harder to actually get money for the development of your game. And then because the stakes went higher, the risks were higher, a lot of them died. So back in 2006, there were around, in Germany alone, there were around 14 publishers that you could show your game to. Right now, one for console or PC games, and then of course a couple of mobile publishers and browser game publishers and all of these guys. But most of them just gone. So yeah, then and back in that was around 2006, 7, and then digital distribution came. So yeah, the problems for publishers got even harder because everybody thought, hey, we don't need the publishers anymore. We'll just go straight to Steam, straight to whatever download platforms there were. But publishers also had another function to finance your game, and so even more publishers struggled and died. And yeah, and at some point there just weren't any left. So what's then? How to get that was around 2010, 2011. How to get your project financed? And then suddenly all the zingers and all the social games and online games suddenly came into the scene, and suddenly investors were the ones who would finance your games. And suddenly everyone was running, yeah, I'm gonna make a social game, I'm gonna have the next Farmville, blah. Because suddenly the whole business model changed from a project model where you invest a lot, then you release, and if you don't get your money back in the first 6 weeks because the game sucks, the money's gone. It changed to a continuous income model where where people free to play, they pay and pay and pay and pay and pay, and you make your game better and better and better. So you have a steady income like a regular company actually. Yeah, that's changed, and then all the investors came in, and then suddenly everybody wanted an investor. And they paid, and the social bubble got bigger and bigger and bigger, and in 2013 it burst. There were literally hundreds of millions wasted, especially in San Francisco, where there were really literally 400 or 500 million dollars just lost in just company who just said, yeah, it's so easy. I mean, the games, come on. I'm gonna make a browser game with a couple of cute little characters in just half a year, and then we're gonna make millions. Didn't happen. So the publishers were gone. The investors don't pay anymore because there was a bubble, and they said, no, we've just burned like $50 million last year on games, so we'll rather invest in nuclear plants. Or wind power or whatever. I mean, that's the problem for investors. They really have the choice. They don't want to make games. They want to make money. And there's a lot of other things in this world that make money. So they're gone now too. Okay. Then mobile came up. And with that, a lot of new mobile publishers came. Mobile publishers, yeah, you've got a lot of them. But they don't finance anything. The only thing they do, you have to come with your finished game,
And then they come and say, well, we won't guarantee you anything, we won't pay you any license fee or nothing, but we'll release your game, and we have an established player base that's like 80,000 people, and well, we'll send an email to them, and for that, we'll take about 40% of all your revenues. But we can't guarantee you anything. But hey, you're in? Fuck them. But that's what's happening. That's what publishers now became. Just a bunch of people who have a mailing list. That's now a publisher. So, okay. What else can you now do? Work for hire. Great stuff, right? Work for hire, unless you really love to make match 3 games with a kids license on it. So if you're really into that, that's your area. But if you don't, you will get very frustrated at some point. Think of suicide, I guess, because after the 5th failed project, or the 5th project that just was mediocre because you ran out of money, they were jerks because they didn't publish it well, you just leave the games industry. That happened to a lot of friends of mine. That at some point they just said, no, I can't get my own project financed. Then you meet somebody during a pitch meeting and they say, hey, yeah, but we've got this very cool idea and let's do Gears of War just on PC. That's much cheaper, right? So 300,000 should be enough. No, but if you still want to make money, if you still want to make games and get some money for it, then you agree. But the only result is you're depressed. So not really an option. At least I wouldn't do it. So for PC and consoles, there's only a couple of people left. But since the market also got much more harder, you can't come with a paper pitch anymore. They want you to come with a full vertical slice, with all the bells and whistles that come with it. It should already look like a final game. Just need to make more of it. But who's going to pay for that? You. And usually, either you didn't have a couple of friends who don't need money, then you just work on it for half a year, and then you have it, and then you have a handful of publishers you can show it to. But the problem is, if none of these, the handful of publishers will take your game, there's your money gone. So, very, very risky. Then the other possible way is, of course, mobile games. They're much cheaper, so you don't have to invest that much. So you can just make a small game. But again, it was already said, there's a game submitted to App Store, or an app submitted to App Store every minute, and if you can still choose to either make a paid app or a free app. And currently, the top 3 paid games have about 10% of the downloads of a free-to-play game. And you can't ask for a lot of money because people on mobile are used to not pay a lot of money. Your game is $3.80? Why is that so expensive? I'm used to 99 cents. And then from these 99 cents, Apple takes 30%. Then there's usually in Europe, you also then have VAT subtracted from that. So you end up with 50 cents. And if you then have one of these cool mobile publishers who have their mailing list, there's another 30% gone. So you end up with like 25% on your game. And then if you're in the top 3 of your sold games, you have 10% of the downloads. So a really good game, let's say you have, say 500,000 downloads of your game, and they really pay for it. You end up with 25 cents by 500,000, which is nice, but that's the top 3. So you have to have a really big hit, and in the places 5 to 10, it goes down to 2 to 5% of the downloads of the free-to-play game. So okay, the obvious choice is let's go free-to-play. Hey, yeah. The problem, of course, is that so many people are doing free-to-play games, and all the advertising spots are limited. the cost per acquisition go high. Usually you have around Christmas, you pay for one guy who pays you $10. So you can have all these models with online advertising, and you pay $10 for a guy who then pays once in your game. So you have to squeeze more than $10 out of that guy to actually make money on it. Otherwise, you're going to lose money. If you make marketing, you're going to lose money. Only if that guy pays more than $10 in your game, you're going to lose money. Well, you can do that. In Korea, there are even people who pay other users to download their games. So they're paying money out. Not a lot, but they're paying money out. That's how the market has become. Yeah, so unless you have, and also since the spots are limited, you need a lot of money. If one user is $10, and so 100 users, $1,000. 100 users? Whoa. That's not a lot of return there. Okay, so self-publishing on PC. Yeah, the indie way. Of course you can do that, but unless you're not doing it that cheap with no office, everything spread out, very small scale, you end up as being one of the thousands of games on Steam. Steam is even thinking now of turning off early access. So you won't even have that income stream anymore. And many of the studios in that area now make the living of selling their games in humble bundles, but not for long. You only get a fracture back. That's very little money. You can't do that. And then, of course, there's Kickstarter. Yeah. You can do it. I mean, it was interesting. Like 2 years ago, there weren't that many projects, but right now the things that you need to have for a successful Kickstarter project are the very same that you need for pitching to a publisher. Basically, you either you have a track record that long, and you just go on camera and say, "Yeah, I've done." You might know me from A, B, and C. Or you can say, hey, I've got this license. Or you can say, here's the almost finished game. Just give me the money, and they're gonna believe you, because Kickstarter is all about trust, right? So if you're just somebody saying, yeah, I have this game idea, nobody's gonna give you money. So you have to invest a lot before you can go on Kickstarter anyway. So very same again, and there's so many failed Kickstarters. So the same formula that I said before with investing first and then everything might be gone is true here as well. So yeah, everybody depressed now? Yeah. Where is this going? I don't know, because I have some ideas, but this is a rant, so I don't want to present solutions. I want to just leave you depressed here. There are some solutions, but I think everybody should just work on making this industry just a little more healthy again. And I'm sure that in a couple of years it's going to be, or this whole thing turns so fast. So it could be 6 months, like mobile came up, or digital distribution came up, or suddenly social games came and went. So everything's so fast. But I think everybody should work on a healthy thing now. The whole race to zero basically has to stop. We don't have to go I can sell my thing, so I'll sell it for $1 less than you. Haha. Just doesn't work. We need to value the things we do. We all want to make a living, and we have to get back to games being something that's worth something again. Okay, thank you.
We have 5 minutes left, so we have time for a couple of questions if anyone has some for any of the speakers.
You asked a question. So regarding the using third-party engines, my opinion is, or there is a saying, if you're holding a hammer, everything looks like a needle. Okay, so uh, my opinion is, if you are going to make any kind of software, not just a video game, you should first do your research and you should find the tools that are suited for problem that you want to solve. And if there are no tools, you should make. And if there are tools that can fit for your solution, you should use them.
I'll actually answer to that because there's another problem with it. Make your own tools. Right now, because I was for 5 years an academic teacher, and I've saw the level on which, because obviously if you want to make tools for some breakthrough thing, you will probably have to use C++ or another low-level language. Right now, the level at which universities teach C++ and the low-level languages is horrible. It's a tragedy. Tragic. Sorry. Okay, it's bad. It's very bad. It's because nobody actually needs that. I mean, people need Java programmers, people need C# programmers, people need JavaScript programmers. Have I forgot something? Python. Okay, so that low-level stuff is taught usually because it was always taught. That's why they teach Pascal actually. And the second reason is because somebody somewhere remembers that probably we should think about how those low-level things work. But right now, each time I'm talking to any kind of C++ programmer, I can destroy him in 3 questions, despite the fact that he's doing C++ programming for the past 10 years. Okay, that was not the point. I'm a teacher, right? So yeah. So basically, I think that in a couple more years, they will stop teaching C++ because there's no so many openings. And right now, there's the only way to actually learn C++ or any low-level language is learn it by yourself. And honestly, who will pay you for the time you spent learning that? Because let's be honest, C++ is a big pile of of special cases. Okay, so I think that's all.
I have something related to that, which is, even if you're doing the model I was talking about, and you make a game for a specific weird platform, like we made a game for PlayStation Mobile, we need to eventually bring it to other things, and we can't use the PlayStation Mobile SDK in the future. So essentially our only option, because of the way that this game was made, is to completely rewrite it in C++. So that knowledge is still necessary and important. But on the other hand, we had another game that was written in a weird thing, and then as our Necrosoft developer Nuno will be saying later today, we got Microsoft to pay us to port it to Unity just so that we could put it everywhere afterward.
But on the other hand, I mean, I remember when there were Super VGA cards, and you didn't have really drivers, so you had to do everything on your own. You had all the bank switching and everything. Oh, how great that time was! No, it sucked. It truly did. When the game SDK came up, that was such a relief. That was so much better. But now what you're saying a little bit is like, oh, let's have back all these times when nothing really, where I had to do everything on my own, because then I can really control them. That's the only way I can really know what it does, because I wrote it. Yeah, but I'm quite happy that we don't do assembly anymore. We have our drivers that do all sorts of stuff. I don't have to support every graphic card that comes on the market, or if you wanted to do it now, right now with Android devices, where you have every week like 5 new Android devices and you had to support everyone on the lowest level, you would just do that and nothing else. You would never do a game because you would only write all the stuff. So I think there's limits to that.
Okay, I just want to tell you to agree that I wouldn't write something for Android not using a pre-made engine. That's suicide.
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. But feel free to talk to all of the speakers after the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.